Because what I think is what your point is well taken. That why are you giving so much respect to what might be your smallest field on bush?
Right.
As lead riders, you should have to bear some of that rider distribution burden. I mean, that may not be the majority view, but in my opinion, like it's a lot of worries. It's like, come on.
Well, there's only 7 of you showing up. You know, and for an hour at the end of the day, you got to have something else going on in order to keep people around to even watch. You know,
We're getting a little bit off track, but the thing that for local events, the thing that always that's I'm noticing more and more is the local 1, 2, 3 races are continually not an hour. Everybody's doing 45-minute or 50-minute 1, 2, 3 races, and I think it's because they're trying to save some time on the schedule and then cater to the threes. Instead of making it a 60-minute race that there's 1s and 2s in there, they're making it a 50-minute or a 45-minute race for the threes. And I think we're getting slower because of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure. We need that extra 15 minutes. So keep that in mind when you're making your schedule. Don't make the threes race for an extra 15, and as opposed to making the 1s and 2s race for 15 months.
because ultimately it'll help the threes get better.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I guess just to, like in NorCal, most of the races are a little bit longer. They're bigger groups, and generally we see a lot more of that. I always get a little surprised by people who want a short race. Like, I'm making this do 50 minutes, and I would only need 4. Like you, right? I'll charge you more and give you a smaller deal.
All right, yeah, well, thank you guys for listening to us.
So how's everybody? We had a 5-minute break scheduled, but we're running slightly behind. Is everybody comfortable with going straight to Stuart? Yes? All right.
I'll take one. I know you didn't come here to listen to anything after. So. Turn your camera. Oh.
So space
Cycling is, I'm Stuart Lamb. I'm the Director of Event Services. So what I do is work with all of our events around the country, oversee a staff of 7 people that are working with over 2,200 events, and also work with the local associations and help with the oversight of that program. So today, what I really wanted to kind of focus on, there's tons of changes within USA Cycling. Clearly, anytime there's a leadership change, there are new ways of doing things. And so I want to talk about the changes to permitting online. So you all will see these changes coming in the near future. Fingers crossed next week. Changes to the fees around permits and insurance. Just out of curiosity, how many people were on the webinar that we did about a week and a half ago on insurance? Okay. Actually, so that's a good question. When we were trying to cut the video down, we cut off a little too much, but we put Tom Mahoney on it. He's getting us the info. We'll get it linked, and then we'll send it out to everybody who registered. And then we'll also send out a note to all the LAs so that they can share it and get it out to all organizers. So some of the topics as far as insurance we'll go over again today so that you get a better understanding of where we're at with the changes in the pricing. And then also you'll get a sneak preview of the upgrade policy changes. So we have not publicly announced those yet. Those will go for March 1st, so that they will go into full effect then. But go ahead and show you what's happening there. The other thing is, at the end of this, we'll talk about the LA program as a whole, because I know based on what you saw earlier, there are changes to the LA program and how that impacts NEBRA and where we're going with those changes long term. All right, so anybody who's used our permit system knows that it is clunky at best. and that's probably a very mild term to use for that. So we have been working, well, we had a partner that we were working with on a new permit system. We scrapped that and went back to doing this with another group. We started that in June of 2019. So right when I moved to Colorado Springs, we went full bore into that. So we're at the point of almost launching that. Hopefully we'll have a soft launch this week coming up. And so there are a lot of changes to the permitting, as you all have known it, who have historically put on events. So a couple of big changes that you'll notice: the event categories, the A, B, C, D, E, and then even the F and G, which were not competitive, those are going away. We will not have those event category types anymore. Disciplines will take place in the event categories. So if you're a road event, it's going to be a road event. If it's cyclocross, it's going to be cyclocross. We'll also have gravel, Grand Fondo, and there will be sub-disciplines underneath those event types. But we're doing this for a few reasons, and one of the key reasons is, first of all, make it easy to understand, filter and find these on the event calendar. But the other reason is for reporting and data. We have very poor data when it comes to knowing what's happening with the different events and what event type is being, happening within a permit. I have to download a spreadsheet from a pivot table, and it's not fun. So those are some of the key changes that we're making there. Some of the other new features, if you put on a series with USA Cycling before, you likely noticed if you ever went to the event calendar, it just hovered at the top of the page for that state for the duration of the entire series. Now what we've changed, and this is more from a promotional perspective, is each one of those dates will be listed separately. So it will actually show in chronological order on the calendar so that you actually know when that series is taking place. You don't have to go 2, 3, 4 clicks to find what dates that series is actually happening. You'll also have the ability to upload your event logo, any type of branding that you have, as well as course maps. Those will be viewed on the event calendar in the near future. So people can actually go in and find more information about your event by simply going to the event calendar on USAC. You also have the ability to make edits online. So as an organizer, if you've ever had to change your flyer, you've had to email JD, who's then emailed Luke in the office, and there's a back and forth, and a lot of times these flyer changes don't happen because there's 4 or 5 emails going back and forth. So going forward, you as the organizer will be able to make these edits online. It goes back through an approval process at that point. So it doesn't impact you negatively, but you have the ability to make these changes and have somebody review it and then approve it and not have to rely so much on email and potentially an email being overlooked.
Is this specifically for just using the online event form as opposed to attaching a document?
No, this is to attaching the document. But let's say, I'll use this. The race announcement is a great example. So let's say you have a new sponsor you want to put on the event announcement that came on board. You can upload that, make a note in the communication, and then from there, our staff will see it, JD will see it, and be able to say everything looks good. Other changes that you'll be able to make, let's say you had a rain out, so you had to postpone the event to another date. You can make a change in the permit system. JD will get that, whoever is your chief referee who's assigned to that event will get that information, as well as USA Cycling staff. So there's a streamlined process to make these edits and keep track of these things long term so that we have a good tracking and history for these events. The other thing, and this is primarily with road events, you'll be able to add the auto-moto information and driver info online easily. That is something that's usually been handled by a spreadsheet and can be pretty cumbersome. So we'll have this integrated. That system will also be able to tell us whether a driver has passed the NBR check or not. So we'll be able to tell whether somebody has to go through an NBR process earlier rather than waiting until the week of the event, where we run into issues where if the driver doesn't go through that process, then we may not be able to get the insurance in place.
That's a really confusing part of the permitting. I can't figure it out.
The automotive.
For somebody that's driving in a caravan or somebody that's driving mutual service on a Grand Fonda or a shop vehicle that has their own insurance. I don't wonder, like, what do I do?
Yeah, so I will tell you as an organizer, from an insurance perspective, you want to take out coverage for each one of those use cases. Okay. And the reason why is because that auto-moto insurance protects you from any liability claims against that driver. It also protects the driver at the same time from any. So I think anybody who's driving in the event, it's advised to take out this insurance. And if we work with you on it, we're happy to make sure that gets done. Who? Somebody. Again, I kind of went over this a few minutes ago, but we want to have better tracking of participation and event data moving forward. One of the things that we struggle with as an organization is knowing who's participating in what, and also noticing the trends within the sport so that we can provide more useful information when we have these meetings, so that you can see, this is where somebody is participating. These are the actual numbers. It's not just locally, it's actually we can split it in larger segments. The other change is we want to provide meaningful event info. So when you're looking at the USA Cycling calendar, right now you have a link to click on for event flyer. You have a link to click on to register if you add that link. But we want to give you more. We want the ability for riders to see maps, and there's other features that we'll be adding in the future, almost like a rating scale, so that people can rate events and create things that are more geared socially towards getting engagement from riders and talking about the events and why this event was awesome. Or this is something that maybe you want to look at improving in the future. That's fine.
So similar to how great bike ride is, whatever you guys are making, is there going to be integration with other existing apps like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok?
That's a good question. In all honesty, I'm sure there will be integration. I just don't know exactly to what level and how many different social media options we'll have, but that's something I'll definitely pass along for sure. All right, so before I go on to this, any other questions? Any questions about the event permit? Yeah.
Just about the event category. So there are a couple fees that the race director made that were based on that category. One was the permit fee, which we know is basically everything's going to be the same no matter what. But also for the former B and A races, there were higher officials fees. I haven't seen anything as far as what's changing there.
Yeah, great question. So from the officiating perspective, that definitely was considered, and Randy is changing that as we speak. So we should have that posted within, I would say, probably a couple of weeks, and updated in the schedule of fees. But I would expect you will see that those bigger races will be kind of PRT events, and there will be that designation of the, at least from the officials payment perspective. You'll see that. It's really hard to tell, from a grassroots event, how do you distinguish? I mean, when we look at this in C3, you know, and there were some C races that were just as much, probably tougher work than any A race you could ever do. So, so Randy's been working on that. Should have that.
I presume all the post-race event forms and all that will all change to reflect on this?
Yes, we've already changed the post-event forms, paper forms. We're rolling out an entirely new online post-event form. That should shortly follow the release of permit. So, and just so you all understand from a training perspective, this is one thing. It's why we did the information or did the webinar about the insurance. We want you all to know this information. We want you to see it. We want you to gather more knowledge and become as knowledgeable as possible. We're going to do training around the new permit system, and we'll also be doing training around the post-event form. There's 3 layers of training there. One is for the event organizers. You have to know how to use the system, especially if we're trying to make this as easy as possible. So we'll have training around that will be reported. We will also do, for any of the LAs, LA coordinator webinar so that they understand from the back end. This is a drastic change on the back end from what they've been used to in the past, so that they understand that. And then we'll also do training with the officials so that they know, because the chief referee can be assigned to the event in the new system. They'll have access and they'll also be able to communicate with the organizer. So, so there's those 3 layers of training that we will be focusing on. And then once the post-event form is ready, we'll do a combined training for both the official and race organizers, so that they understand how this is going to function and operate. Very similar operationally on the back end from a post-event side to what is currently done now. It should be cleaner though, a cleaner process for everybody. Any other questions? All right.
Quick thing, the premium income, was it driven up by things filed against us?
I'll go over that here in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show it in a chart. So, so we did make, and we published the changes to the schedule of fees once we had our insurance finalized for 2020. This year was difficult. I'll go into those reasons for those who want the webinar. We had Alex Fairley, who works with us, and his group works with us as a broker for the insurance to explain this, but we'll go over that. Permit fees, we really, anybody who's permitted an event and had a prize list of $1,999 or had a $2,000 prize list, I'm sure you were frustrated by originally paying a 7% penalty, but then it changed to 5%. We at least got it reduced a couple of years ago. But we've done away with the percentage based on prize payout. There's no restriction on how much you're going to pay for a permit or any complication based on how much you decide to pay participants. So we simplified that. We'll go over that. Again, the insurance surcharge and the changes driven by the premium increase that we face. Also the same with the excess insurance, which is, we call it the umbrella insurance that is completely optional. It's not something that you have to take out. But most of the fees have remained the same. The one fee that is going to change, and it's not reflected currently in the schedule of fees, is the permit late fees and post-event late fees. So those will change. We're going to one late fee, and it's not as much as some of the other late fees that we've had. So our goal is, our staff, my team is truly focused on making sure that once your event, whether it's not happened yet or whether it's already passed, there's going to be follow-up and there's going to be communication to make sure that you get everything turned in If you need help, communicate with us. You know, we're willing to work with everybody. It's we understand the economics of bike racing can be difficult, and so we want you to know that you just need to let us know what you need help with. All right, so hopefully everybody can see this. This is pretty small, but I've tried to get everything on here. So these are our permit fees going forward. So we've had several different permit fee types in the past. We have a series permit, then we have a daily permit fee. And part of that daily permit fee was based around how much you were paying out in the past. And so what we tried to do is simplify that, because the goal is to have this set up to where you know what to budget for. As an organizer, you don't want to have to see the surprise when you try to permit a USA Cycling event and, oh, I've got $5,000 and I'm paying out to a Pro 1-2 field. Now I have to pay out, you know, $1,000+ for a permit fee because of the 5%. So what we did was we took our permit fee structure that we had. Instead of probably a large majority of our events were D-level events in the past, so they were paying $75. But we're also losing money because of those A and B and C level events that we're paying based on that 5%. So to eliminate this and bring this down to a level that you can budget for, but also a level that we're not losing too much money on this at first, is to go at $100 per day. The series permit, which is the other one that we offer, and that's an event that's held at the same location, typically the same day of the week, and they have not had a prize list higher than $499. Don't ask me how we arrived at that, but that was it. So that had been for 1 to 3 days that have been $50, for 4 days to 30 days that have been $100 in the past. And as we've all seen the sport shift, we've seen a lot of these series take place. Some of these weeknight series are some of the hardest for our staff to deal with and work with, because of the processing of claims, processing of insurance paperwork, and other things. So instead of, we try to go to a simpler system where we charge $25 per day for these series permits, and there would be a $250 cap on how much you would pay for the series permit. That's 10 days, which we have several that go well over 10 days. And the goal was, again, this is something with the cap you can budget for. And even if you don't have the cap, you know how much you're going to pay based on the number of days that you have in the series. So the other thing, just to note that there's no collegiate fees built into this. So if you include a collegiate event into an existing permit, and it's a checkbox now that you have, there's not going to be any additional fee that you have to pay for collegiate. We want to keep that as basically the same as it has been for any of the collegiate events that partner up with a non-collegiate. Any questions about the permit fees? Yes, sir.
What if you had 2 different types of events in the same day? Would that be looked at as 2 different events and 2 different permits, or it's the same course, same event? It's just 2 different. Let's say you had a road race and a grand final on the same day, the same course. Is that 2 permits?
It would be 2 permits because, again, another reason why we went this route is to clearly define the event types. So we're about to post that information online so that there's clear definitions for what these events are. But on those situations, we're willing to work with you on that because we know it's the same, you know, course, same setup. But because a fondo is different than, a road race, doesn't require a license, we want to keep those rules in place because that does come up when we start dealing with, insurance issues or other things. Okay. Yes.
You run a clinic as part of your road race, is that required, additional permit?
Talking about a beginner. We usually can build that in as long as it's in the schedule. Okay. Any other questions? All right, so the insurance surcharge, hopefully everybody saw the email that went out about this. This is probably the biggest change to everything that we're doing. The race surcharge went up, so that's for any competitive event, whether it's road, cross, track, mountain bike. It's $4.75 per day. We also have Grand Fondo, gravel, and then camps and clinics. That's also $4.75 per day. The ride surcharge, this is for your fun ride, charity ride type events. That's $3.75 per day. Nobody enjoys increasing these types of fees. This is the second year in a row that I've been a part of that discussion, and it is one of the tougher discussions that we have. But and I'll go into it here in a little bit. But when you're dealing with a hard market like we are in the insurance space for this type of policy that covers everything that you want it to cover, it's really challenging because the premium goes up, and we'll go over it, but we're still subsidizing a large portion of the increase. So we have not passed on the full cost of this increase in insurance to the organizer. I want to go over the excess insurance. This is the umbrella policy. This is completely optional. What it is it's a $2 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate on top of what you already have with your event insurance through your permit. And the reason why we have this is there are municipalities out there that require additional insurance coverage as a prerequisite to get your permit. And so we worked with our broker and the carrier to make sure that we have this policy in place. The big difference here is we went from 4 million down to 2 million. Okay, so in the past, that umbrella policy has been $4 million, but it's now down to 2 million. And part of that was the cost of the policy in the hard market. It just made it to a point where we can save a lot of money and then work with the individual events to try to negotiate to get them the additional insurance that they needed. So the umbrella insurance did go up as far as the cost goes. Just to give you a good understanding, from this policy, when the Fairleigh Group was working on this, the cost that they were getting back from carriers to add just $1 million worth of insurance was about $5,000. So to get 2 million under the umbrella and pay based on this format is a significant discount, and it's something that we're subsidizing, and I'll show you that here in just a second. Any questions about that? Any questions about the umbrellas? Everybody understand how that is an extra layer of protection? All right, so this is how much the GL policy costs. So when we pay the premium, it's $2.7 million, and that covers the premiums, deductible fees, and claims management of this program. And then this is how it gets split up. So the event liability plus cost is $2.5 billion. So the member, club, and auto insurance. The club insurance for many clubs out there, you take that out. we do pay to have that policy actually in place is a benefit to the clubs. You still pay for the policy, but we actually have to pay this premium up front to get it. And then there's also the USAC operations. It's $25K. That covers our operations as an organization, and claims that would come up against, national team issues or other things like that we run into. So you can see that our event liability, $2.5 million is the largest chunk of what we're paying here. So what we did was we took the event costs and divided by the number of event days, which was 475,000. And so the rider day surcharge across all of those rider days would be $5.30 per rider. So we're subsidizing about 55 cents per rider currently with the changes that have taken place. And so the big issue was, when we looked at this, first of all, the Fairleigh Group's a phenomenal group. They represent just about every major sports league in the U.S. We're really fortunate to have them because, quite honestly, we probably couldn't afford them for what they do for the NFL, NHL, some of the other major sports leagues. But event insurance is a problem across the board. They were just recently working on the Super Bowl for the insurance policy for the Super Bowl. And in that discussion, the price had gone up almost 3 times what the original quote had been in this period of time that we were working out the details on our insurance. And the problem and why that's happening is there are several carriers who've gotten out of the marketplace altogether in the past year. So when you have carriers leaving the marketplace, the costs go up. And so it's the nature of what we're dealing with currently. We were fortunate to keep the same carrier that we had, and some of this does come from claims. We've had some pretty substantial claims, but at the same time, we were fortunate to keep this cost down or as low as possible for the organizers. All right, so this is the umbrella policy, and this will give you a better understanding. So the umbrella, we purchased that's $240,000 for the premium, and that's at the $2 million. If we added the $4 million, it was going to be about $400,000. We only received about $55,000 in fees paid into that by the organizers, and that was something that we were likely going to see decrease with Tour California no longer being in place because it was one of the larger, at least larger events that bought into that policy. So with that 55K, we're still subsidizing $185,000 of this policy. And that's just to meet the minimum requirements that some cities around the country need. All right, let me go back. So any questions? Now, one thing I do want to just mention here, it's come up a few times, and we discussed this heavily on the insurance webinar. We didn't go over it as much as we wanted to, and if I had like 2 hours, I would love to go over this topic more with everybody. But what do you get with the USA Cycling insurance coverage that you don't get when you go and source out your own policy? So one of the things in my role that I do is we work with a lot of non-traditional events, trying to get them on board. That's been a big focus of mine over the past several months. And we've started to make some headway there. We have one of the largest participation events in California that is happening in weeks, that is working with USA Cycling for the first time. And we've looked at these insurance policies from these events. These are some reputable events, reputable organizers. We get the policy, and I work with our rep from the Fairleigh Group to review it. And when we review these policies, you would be amazed at how many of these have language in the policy that excludes you from having coverage at any cycle. I mean, it is,
Say that again?
there's language within the policy. So here's a key distinction that I want everybody to walk out of here knowing. Everybody can get an insurance certificate. Insurance certificate is what we provide you once we've insured the event. And everything is, the coverage is bound by the carrier. But that insurance certificate doesn't tell you all the exclusions, all of the issues that you could run into based on that policy that the carrier has issued.
You're talking about the one you're selling me or the one somebody else is selling?
Anybody's selling. I can gladly share our policy, but when we get other policies, and this is where it comes in, USA Cycling's in a role to help serve and protect the sport. And so from the perspective of you going out to an outside carrier, they don't have that obligation. They don't have that commitment. And so, so in a lot of these situations, there have been exclusions. I'll give you a couple of examples really quick and try to do this briefly. One group that we were working with going forward, he had an exclusion, and it was specifically excluded in the policy. It named all the event types that were covered for liability. Cycling was not listed, and it was split into two, as all adults and youth. And in both situations, cycling was not on the list of included sports that were covered. That means you have no coverage. If you have a claim, that's the carrier says, well, it's a cycling event, and it's not covered in the policy. So we're not going to fight this for you. That is one of the issues that you run into. It's a risk. Some people are willing to take it. I personally would not, but some are. So yeah.
Just to back up a little on this, last year we were looking fairly, we were looking at doing a one-day non-sanctioned event around the following to run it for our USAC sanctioned event. I looked at probably 5 different carriers, all of them which were like claiming to being like specialists in doing sporting events, had specific exclusions related. It'll say like, oh, we'll do cycling. And then you'll see in the fine print, non-competitive, no competitive events, stuff like that. It really, it ultimately led us right back to USAC. So I think just to back you guys up, that was a big part of why we do it on the sanction when we started with USAC.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's, we've seen some of these policies roll in, and it's, one, I even raised the question, is this, it's like it's insurance fraud by the broker.
Yeah.
Because when I go to a broker and tell them what I need, and you give me this policy and it's got these exclusions in it, that's not a good situation. Another one that happened, and there are different layers of coverage within the USAC policy, and a couple of key ones I want to explain real quick is you have a participant versus organizer. That's a critical coverage. That's really, if you need coverage, that's the one you need, because that's protecting you from any lawsuits arising from a claim from a participant against the organizer for liability. The other aspect that's very important is the spectator versus organizer. USAC's policy is unique in the fact that it covers both you as the organizer and also the rider in case the spectator is injured. Other policies, the rider is not guaranteed any coverage. They're not guaranteed to be protected from any claims there. So that's an important thing. If you've been in the sport long enough, whether it's cyclocross or road or even track, somebody crosses the road when the field is barreling down on them in a crit and gets T-boned. Well, that person has a case, and if they find out who the rider is, they're gonna go after them. They're going to go after volunteers who are also covered under the USAC policy as named insureds. So it's really important to know this. The the thing about the participant versus organizer coverage that was really, we had a policy on this that came through was, there was a mountain bike series that was, we were discussing working with them in their policy. Their policy on, usually you have to dig into the policies. On page 3, which is, this is very rare to come at it that early. They had clearly stated for every event that they had listed with the insurance company, no participant coverage, all the way down. And that means essentially they had no coverage in case a participant came back and sued them. They wondered why they were paying $800 a year and why their insurance was so cheap. And this was why. They had no liability coverage against the, to protect them from any participant claim. So it's just something, if there's ever a question, we will gladly review the insurance policy. The Fairley Group is that they don't have any skin in the game, really. They're impartial. They review the policy. They're very thorough, and they'll tell you everything that you want to know to at least make you aware of any exclusions that could impact you with any policy. Yes, sir.
Sure. The insurance companies generally don't have any incentive to reduce costs. They'll charge whatever their costs are. Is there anything or anybody within USA Cycling that is looking at these claims and working on a risk reduction kind of advisory, that they can put forth to promoters and officials in order to reduce claims? Is there a big difference between the West Coast and the East Coast? Are certain disciplines higher category claims than others, and maybe those costs ought to be passed on to that category rather than over the entire sport?
Good question. As far as the claims go, they run all disciplines. I mean, some of our, we've had one big one from a camping clinic. We had another one from a fun ride. And we've had several others that have run across all disciplines. There's no one specific discipline that's at a lower risk. Therefore, we could reduce the cost necessarily. But to your question about having somebody in place to work with risk management, we were working towards adding basically a race director education manager to really focus on risk management. And that has been put on the back burner because we needed to push forward with some other projects first. So we didn't get that in the budget for 2020, but that is in the works. And we have some things within the permit process long term that will help if you go through these types of race director education. Basically, how many people are coaches in here? So we have the CEU program, so you can take these education units on your own time, and they're going to be more based on risk management and how to reduce risk. Then you eventually could get a reduced insurance rate based on you doing all these things at your event to minimize the risk that takes place in case there's any accident or any claims, that can come up.
Yeah, speaking for the 7 or so officials in this room, we're often called upon to make some determination. I think it would be helpful if we add either history or more guidance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you'll see this in currently it won't be in permitting, it will be in the post-event form. And once we do get, a education manager in place for this, there will be certain questions that you answer as chief referee when you're doing the post-event that will specify that the organizer actually did follow through on the things that they said they were going to do to reduce risk.
Now, you've alluded a couple times to I know the coaches have to go through human training. And a couple of years ago, there was an effort to put in promoter certification and training. And I just checked my license, it's still saying that it's expired and there's no, and every year I have to ask, can you unlock it again? Because I can't put a permit in because there's no way to. So what's happening with that?
So so with the new permit system, and the reason why you've experienced that in the existing legacy system is everything's hard coded. And if our IT department touches it, then we may lose the website altogether. And so with that being said, what we try to do is with the new platform going forward, make this to where it's easier to use without as much work on the organizer. You have to reach out to us, and then we issue the certification, and then you can go through and permit via them.
But what's going to be done to clean up that whole race director's certificate?
So
I haven't been able to renew it.
we're not going to require the race director's certificate. If you don't have a club that you're working with, you can take out the race director license, but it will not keep you from going through and permitting until you get this.
So that thing's going away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Trying to make it a little easier. Any other questions? All right, we'll go. All right, so want to go to upgrades. Good luck reading this slide. There's a lot of information on there, but a couple of things on this I wanted to point out. So as JD and Colin mentioned earlier, USA Cycling will be taking over the permits, not permits, but upgrades from basically 5 to 1 as it stands now. And that will take place on March 1st. The goal was to simplify the process. I know that it looked like earlier that most people didn't think it was too hard or too easy upgrades, but at the at the same time, I think the biggest issue that we faced with upgrades in the past is just the confusion on the process. Most people looked at rankings points and thought, even though we put in big red bold letters that these are not upgrade points next to it, people thought those were the upgrade points. And at the same time, people also didn't want to go to the upgrade policy, or read the rule book to see exactly what they had to do to earn the upgrade. So we've made some tweaks to this system. The general policies are fairly similar. I think the big change would be that we've expanded the series. So riders who are more than halfway through a series of 10 races or less may request a one-time waiver of a mandatory upgrade with approval from the series director and USA Cycling to continue in that series to finish it off. In the past, that has been tied to an actual permit you've had. This entire series had to be under the same permit. So that's a change. The others regarding, I think one of the other big changes is the juniors, youth, and masters who earn points in the leader U23 races would be subject to mandatory upgrades with those points only up to Cat 3. So, and the reason we've had a few of the junior mandatory requests come through. I think there was a kid in California who had 140 upgrade points, which is, I don't even know how you get to that point, really. Mainly, I didn't get enough results as a racer, but this is try to keep those riders going up through the pipeline, and we had the exemption from the mandatory upgrades a few years ago for juniors, and so this was one of the things that did backfire on that. So another change here, yeah.
The junior mandatory upgrade has been abolished?
No, what it means is basically so if the participants are racing in category events, then they are not exempt from a mandatory upgrade.
But that wasn't the case in the past.
Yes, That's correct. We had eliminated the mandatory upgrade because a lot of juniors, there were pockets of the country that, riders were earning points and they did not want the athlete to move up, even though they were earning points in, Cat 4 races. So, so again, we've at least found a compromise here that's fairly easy to understand, I think, for the majority of people. Yes.
Quick question on the, I guess the second to last one, downgrade rule there. Is that completely new or is that just a reiteration?
So it's mostly a reiteration. We have had this in the past. I mean,
Because I'm just more so concerned that there'll be people who decide to upgrade and then don't do so well in the first couple of races in that new category, and then just say, hey, I'm going to downgrade back. Which, I mean, that's kind of the critical point, but that's been part of the fun.
Yeah, and the key to this is it's subject to review. And so, yes, if somebody upgraded and they did 2 races, and they didn't do well, but they raced that year up until that point and they were doing really well, I would say unique experience. If you upgraded the year before, 6 months in between races, you did 2, and then you also tell me that you had twins during that time period and you ride your bike 2 hours a week, I would be more lenient on that. So, the other change here that I think is pretty, this has not been in the policy in the past, but a rider may be downgraded for the following reasons: unsafe riding, lack of ability to compete in current category, or lack of placement within current category. We didn't expressly have unsafe riding in the past listed, but as we look at this, and one of the concerns will be, people are riding on the trainer a lot more, they get jumped into a crib, and they're not as good in the pack as they need to be. So if we have those issues, we have the ability to take a look at that and put a rider in the correct category or correct placement based on their skills at this point.
What's the input used for that? Because right now, the only official one I know of is the discipline report from an official. What else is there?
We get more than discipline reports from officials. We get complaints about riders, and so usually those don't necessarily go into the discipline reports, but we do have a ability to look at those and review those. And so usually if we get 2 or 3 reports where there's fire, yeah, exactly. If somebody took out a rider with 2 to go in a crit one time and everybody in the field complained, well, that may have been just a boneheaded move, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the rider's, unsafe or too aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, and I totally get it. This has been part of the fabric of what, we do for, ever since I've been racing, going back to the 80s. But the interesting thing is, if you look at it from a standard of, okay, what are they going to cost you, your crashes or be less of a risk? It's kind of laughable that like Cat 5 packs are actually bigger and less experienced riders who know how to actually respond to someone who's behaving unsafely. So there's part of me that wonders, is there other ways that we need to go about addressing unsafe riding besides just downgrade? Why just move the problem to a place that may even cost more damage?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things, again, this goes to the longer term shift in what local associations are doing around the country, but it's to put more emphasis on educating and serving that role. I think I talked about this, I think a few others, the club structure has changed so much that a lot of that educational opportunities or components that were there in the past aren't there now for riders coming into the sport like they used to be. it's more focused on, other aspects of riding. And so if we can get more clinics, more beginner programs, that's going to be critical to helping address a lot of those concerns. And
I think like the unsafe driver, and they get sent, they have to go take drive, it's like, and I know I'm getting a little bit ridiculous, but in an ideal world, it would be, hey, you need to go take a road clinic.
Yeah, no, and that's,
To add to that, I think if we're looking at retention, the best thing we can do is talk to coaches in the region. All these organizations have clinics, pure race clinics or advanced racing clinics. Direct that rider to the clinic, talk to the coach, and once perhaps we submit a report and they're allowed to stay within that category. This seems like a little too punitive.
Yeah, okay.
I just think, to Rob's point, the only way you make things safer by downgrading someone is that it's like such a serious statement from the federation that you might actually pay attention to them about your riding, right? Like, it's not that it's safer, but it's just like.
Oh, no, I'm with you, and that circles back actually to Jed's point, which is maybe we approach them and say, hey, listen, you need to go to a clinic.
It's like, how do you give someone, like, everyone thinks everyone else is sketchy, right?
Right.
But like, if there's like actually like, I'm not sketchy, you're not sketchy, but that other guy, right? So like, the only way you can make someone listen to you is if it's like, the officials think you're so sketchy, you're going back down a category, then they'd be like, wow, maybe I actually am. So I think that's the only way this like actually would help is that angle.
And I like that. So no, I think it's that.
Super heavy-handed, and I bet it never happens. But if it did, that's how we're helping.
Right.
All right. So I want to move on. I'm surprised nobody called it in the first slide, or they didn't say anything about it. But I'll start from the bottom on this one, actually. So Cat 5 will transition to the term novice this year. Okay. So, there's been a lot of back and forth discussion, way too much over what we title this group, but novice feels like it's the right term. People took offense to beginner, but the goal is to make this a category that's easy for people to understand when they're coming into the sport, that this is where they're going to start. And on top of that, there will be some changes that you'll see here in the near future with a new membership that we'll be offering that will be geared towards this novice in the efforts to build up the pool of members within USA Cycling, get back to more of what Gerard had envisioned, years ago. So one of the big things on this, I wanted to point out the elimination of the mixed build guideline. So for JD, when he's done upgrades, there's nothing like having to sit there and figure out how many Cat 3s and how many Cat 4s are in, although you've got a nice tool provided, but
it's not close to perfect.
Hey, the good thing is now though, that with that mixed field guideline going out, it's a lot closer. So that's to the benefit of the rider. There was, for a rider who's participating in a crit with 50 plus riders in it, you earned that if you got into the top 3, or top 5. And to have those riders that were necessarily Cat 3s, not count towards the field size, the sport's changing, and we had to embrace that within this policy. So you'll see that here in just a second. We also added higher points values for both CX and road events with larger fields. So the larger the field is, you're going to start to get more and more points. There was an artificial cap of 50 plus riders. We changed that and added some additional fields so that more points can be earned. Yes.
Is it more points or more points and deeper?
More points and deeper. All right, I included this, but I know we're on a tight timeline here at this point, so I'm going to skip that. But the one thing I did for everybody in this room, the organizers in the room, there will be a transition process throughout this whole year, going from the terminology Cat 5 to novice. But when you're building out your event flyer, novice is what we want that titled. If you've already permitted an event for this year and it's got Cat 5, we're not going to ask you to change it necessarily.
Can you put both?
You can put both. You can say also known as Cat 5 or formerly known as Cat 5. You can have that in there. The other thing too to point out, because this has been, when we first started discussing this, this was one of my concerns, because we have so many 4-5 fields around the country. Can novices race with another group? You know, because if they can't, then we're asking organizers to add an entirely new field to an already packed schedule. And will that work? Does that work? And the answer is you can still combine the novices with another group. The only concern or issue, or I guess where you can't, is the entirely open field. So if you just did an open, and I'm not talking about masters, okay? I'm talking about just an open category.
Like citizens.
Yes. You couldn't do, we don't want the novices being mixed in with pros and Cat 1s at that level. So masters, it would be okay. Yes.
What's driving this? Like, I mean, was there something about the drive or a name change? I mean, I guess I don't get it.
Two, one is entirely new membership coming out. So, like I said, you all will see this in February. And the reason for this is to simplify the terminology for somebody who's coming in, because we are really making a hard push into people outside of our ecosystem. This is to the non-racer. This is to the enthusiast cyclist who's participating in fondos. But they look at our category structure. They look at bike racing and say, where do I even start on this? And so, and we're going to do some informational stuff around that to make this very clear and easy for those riders to come into this.
When you're keeping all, like, we're not going back to the days of expert.
Nothing like that. I'm not going to say that won't happen at some point in the future, but I'm telling you, at least for 2020, there will be a Cat 1 work. Yeah. So, but no, we won't. You know, I don't even know how we do that on the road with as many groupings as we have. But all right. So I'll highlight the road upgrade policy and the cross upgrade policy. I think those are two of the critical ones here. So you'll see the points table. In the past, you've seen crits and road races were weighed the same, or weighed differently, I'm sorry. Now they're weighed the same. So if you look at this, crits and road races are treated equally from a points perspective.
You can't see that.
That's what I was afraid of.
Kill the light for a second. So we can see it.
All right. So for the majority of these groups, this has not changed up to the 21 to 49, but 50 to 69 and then 70 plus. And really one of the key things is we have more crits around the country than we do road races. For riders to be able to move up, there was more points available for road races, but we know that those are not as readily available as they used to be. So this will help a lot of riders to get through the system. I like to refer to this as it's pro rider. It's to get riders to move up. And if you get results in large fields, you're going to get more points. You're going to be able to move up quickly because you're proving yourself against bigger fields and tougher competition.
Mandatory means they can't stay back.
Mandatory means they can't stay back.
Can't stand that.
But it's within 12 months. This is where our watchdog group comes in. Riders against sandbaggers. That's what we're going to start a support group. But for the most part, the actual points values have remained the same. The biggest change here is the novice to Cat 4. You can actually self-select to move up. Part of the reason for that is for one of the complaints that we've gotten from a lot of participants who come into the sport from fondos and other things who are super strong, they say, I've got to do 10 races to ever move up to Cat 4. But yet I can go out and do a Grand Fondo and I can place, in the top 25 out of 5,000 riders. So, for this in particular, and I can't remember, Chris, it may have been to you, we were talking about the combined fields, but when we're combining Cat 4 and novice anyway, they're going to get that beginner experience. They're going to have to earn their way up, but if they're strong enough and they're confident enough on the bike, then holding them back to get those 10 mass start finishes is not going to help them get through and stay engaged and want more in the sport of cycling. Any question? Yes.
The flip side of that too is that somebody gets second place in a large race and they're up in one race, manageable. Right? So if I finish second in a 70+ race, I'm a 4 at the next race.
Yeah. Technically, there'll be too many 70+ races for Cat 5s or the 4 and 5 fields because there's that combined.
Unfortunately, yes, there is.
There is.
Well,
Usually there's 50, like we cap it at 50, but
Yeah.
a general, like if we just hold a Cat 5 race.
because the combined cap is 75 altogether.
Yeah, but if we do a straight out Cat 5, often that's capped at 50, and yeah.
There is that concern. I mean, but again, at the same point in time, if they're able to do that, and it's get 70+ riders,
So
this may not be the right starting point for them.
So USAC is going to enforce all mandatory upgrades, not JD?
Yes. So the Watchdog group, JD won't have as many emails coming in from the Watchdog group. And my late nights will get even later. All right. And then CX upgrade policy. So we made the changes to this as well. You'll notice the points table is a little different than the previous one, actually, because we do tend to have a lot of larger fields than 50 starters, 60 starters. So we did tweak this a little bit. It's no exact science. There's no perfect way to do this, but in an effort to assist the rider and get them moving up based on racing in large fields, we did increase or change the points table to reflect fields with 60 or more starters. And we've got those 2 new columns of points that are available. Other than that, this is, for the most part, stayed the same other than the novice to 4. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
On the road, with the crit and road points being the same, how does that affect the minimum distance?
We did away with the minimum distance.
Okay.
And the reason for that, again, simplified, one of the challenge, if we really held everybody to that minimum distance, there's not many 80-mile Cat 1 road races anymore.
The distances were really becoming a big problem.
Yeah.
And that was one we faced, so. All right. Any other questions about the upgrades? All right, so now to the last topic, the changes to the LA program. So, when we started to look at the LA program and where we were headed, one of the things that we've looked at and I've looked at this for a long period of time, is the LAs were set up to help grow the sport locally. And what that turned into was more of a governance model than a growth model. And there's still ways that NEBRA or other local associations around the country can help us with the actual governance, but without the burden or responsibility that comes with some of that. Because, you know, I'll say, having been somebody who's served on a local association and done a lot of the governance work as well in my non-existent free time, that the you know, the LA is critical to helping work with the organizers, the officials, your local community, and helping make sure things run smoothly. That's not changing. The biggest change will be that JD will still be able to review permits, or if it's not JD, you know, but JD's who's doing it now, and he'll still be able to look at permits in the new system. But one of the challenges we had to tackle and face was races need insurance quicker and quicker than ever these days. NEBRA may not be facing that, but other areas of the country are. And we've had permits, we've lost a couple of events due to the fact that we could not get the insurance process quick enough because they're sitting on race wires. Instead of sitting on the race wire, let's change the process. So there can be a back and forth dialogue in a race announcement, and we can get things buttoned up and have a specific time where we want to cut things off, cut these major changes off. But we can go through and get the insurance certificate. They can secure their local permits and get through the process. So that was one of the changes that we really need to look at making to serve all organizers around the country. The other change with the upgrades is it's time consuming. You know, JD spends a ton of time doing upgrades. And it's not, you know, I'm not going to say this for all LAs. JD did a great job. Not everybody did a fantastic job. And so, you know, we do need to improve the consistency there. But at the same time, if I have questions, I know JD's got answers. He goes to the races. He knows the riders. If we have concerns or questions, we're going to go to JD. You know, NEBRA will still be involved with the officials' assignments. Even with the shifts, you know, I want to say that the long-term vision is to have NEBRA look at more of a growth. How can they support for clinics, education? NEBRA can become that source that is lacking in, you know, when we look at these clubs and the club structure, we don't have the club structure that we used to have. NEBRA can transition and be that source of education and get riders through and into the sport that we can bring in through this new membership model. I will tell you, even though I'm not going to go into details about it because I've been sworn to secrecy on the new membership model, I can tell you this is by far the best product we put out or put together in a long time. If this is not successful, then we go back to the drawing board. But it's going to be tweaks to what we're working on and putting together. But there's value behind it. There's absolute value behind this, and there hasn't been value necessarily behind the other membership opportunities. So our goal is to bring those members in, get those non-traditional participants in, and then NEBRA can take that and cultivate the next wave and next crop of bike racing. We're also making a further commitment and a really big commitment into juniors. And that's something that I think, you know, that NEBRA will see the benefit of here in the near future. And, you know, Rob is also very committed, and, you know, it's interesting because he travels a lot and he's traveling and meeting with groups, but he's going to groups that are outside the normal. He's not going to our traditional cycling community. He's going to new communities. He's going to, you know, work with, you know, a lot of groups that are going to impact growth in sport through diversity, focusing more on trying to get more minorities engage in the sport and make the sport more accessible. And that's very important. It's important to see that change. So,
What do you say? We need diversity.
yeah. So, so I know this, again, you know, this year, you know, we're making this transition with the LA program. This is not the final, this is not the finished product. This is a transition. This is to get us from point A to get us to a better place here in the near future as we make this transition. I've worked extremely hard to try to keep NEBRA at a very high level. We reduced the LA funding through this process to really two things. One, put more efforts behind getting more members in. So that money that we save is going directly into marketing and to push that membership out in ways that we've never done with any other membership before. The other aspect of it is I took, you know, I get to manage these budgets now. That's one of the great roles and responsibilities there. The insurance change really hit the budget in a major way. And that was after we had already budgeted for 2020. So, you know, we're taking this money, we're reinvesting and supporting bike racing as best we can at this point. But, you know, hopefully in the near future, we've got a better path for all LAs. But NEBRA's funding is going to be at a level that are close to the same level it's always been. There's about, we're funding the LAs at about 70 to 75% of what they were funded in 2018, which was the second highest payout that we've ever made to the LA program. But it's not 75% across the board. You know, some groups are about half of the funding that they got previously. So NEBRA is at a high level. I consider, I've told JD this, NEBRA is almost what I, for lack of better terminology, if you've seen our Centers of Excellence program for you know, junior clubs and youth programs, I consider NEBRA a center of excellence. It really works hard for this community and tries to help get people engaged and support the organizers. And we realize that, and we want to keep that going and keep that strong. So I know that's probably not all the details everybody wanted, but you know, any questions about that and any of the changes?
JD, I would like to hear from JD, what he thinks. Everybody, it reflects you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're really pleased that we're getting funded at the rate that we are. I realize that we're getting more than one other local association. I think it speaks a lot to the changes that we made in the past few years to get away from the administrative side and become much more proactive in creating events like this to educate our promoters, working with NEBRA and the Northeast Official Symposium, in getting our officials to be customer service oriented, to really be conscious of the products that you are all creating. We want to make sure we don't damage that. I'm a little nervous about the changes to the LA program because change is a little scary. I think, you know, what Rob is doing and the conversations that he's having, I think, are long overdue. We've got a lot of historical baggage that needs to get addressed. We'll see. It's going to be a transition year for them. So, but by and large, the new membership program is going to be great. The upgrade process is going to be great. We'll see how the permits go. But I'm looking forward to changing up what I'm doing a little bit and getting out to more events and advocating more for growth in sport. So I can feel more upgrades and stuff like that. So things are
Well, also I want to say thank you to all of you. First of all, you gave up a Sunday to be here. And, you know, I think one of the things, oftentimes when people look at Colorado, now that I'm in Colorado, never thought I'd say that, but, you know, that we don't appreciate the work that everybody does. But quite honestly, you know, we appreciate everything that you all do. I've been in this position, I've sat on this side of the fence and done a lot of the different jobs, and you guys are all critical to the sport. Thank you all for what you do. Thanks for the support. And we're going to continue to support you all in any way we can. So, thank you.
Were you a local association president at one point? I think it's important to point that out, like,
Yeah.
a lot of people meet you for the first time, but like, I think what you said is true, like, there are a lot of people in the office who've done a lot of jobs. And, like, you know, I called someone out on the internet for using a phrase like the suits in Colorado. Who the hell are you talking about? Because
I can't afford a suit.
I just, you know, we're talking about JD's job as the head of RLA, and like, if you understand that Stuart has actually had that job himself in the past, like, I just think it helps people understand that they can connect to folks in the office. Half the time they don't know who they are, but like, you guys are just an email or phone call away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, I mean, you know, as far as my background, I mean, you know, I've been, the last year that I covered the East Coast, I was on the road about 36 weekends that year, traveling to the events. And I did that on a $10,000 budget. Wow.
It's like being a real life racer.
Exactly. So, you know, again, I think, you know, everybody in this room makes sacrifices to do what you do. And we all do it because we love it. And so, just know that you're appreciated and we're thankful for all of you. If there's anything I can do to help, here's my contact info if you don't already have it, as well as my replacement on the East Coast, Matt. He couldn't be here. He was at another LA meeting this weekend. So but he's been up to, I think,
Is that Fundo?
Yeah, he was at Fundo shortly after he started, and we're going to try to get him up for some more events in 2020, so he can come up here and be visible, and you all can get to know him and meet him. So, but we're here for you. Email, phone call, text. I wouldn't do Facebook Messenger. I'm not a huge fan of that, but you know, yeah. And if you got Slack, yeah, I mean, Slack's great too. So, all right, appreciate it. Thank you all. Thanks very much.
Colin, do you want to do the lights off? All right. So we're going to come to our last presentation here. Appreciate it. We're running a little longer. I appreciate it. For those of you who haven't met Sean and Lisa, they are our officials assigners. They are the people who are responsible for giving you your crews for road, track, and cyclocross events. For those of you who do promote mountain bike races this year, we're going to be having individual conversations with you as to how we do the officials assignments for mountain bike. Right now, you all get your own officials. If that's working for you, we're going to let that ride. We do have some officials who are interested in getting involved in some mountain bike races, so we'll be contacting you individually just to say, hi, yes, we want to come help out in your events. So key things on the assignment process for 2020. Yeah.
So thanks for having us all. We appreciate your time. You know, we're running behind here, so we're going to try to keep it as short as possible. I just want to give you a basic overview of the assignment process that we do. Once we get a notification that you've got a permit in place, that we posted to a website for our officials to be able to submit their availability. Okay, that process usually takes a few weeks to a month, depending on when it is and all of that. If you have a particular chief referee that you've had a good experience with, or you want to work with again, or unfortunately don't, please send us an email as early as possible. And we don't have a slide, but everybody get ready with your pens. It's assignments@NEBRA.us. Assignments@NEBRA.us. Just send us for your race, even if it's in August. Let us know now if there's a particular request that you have, and we keep track of that so that when we get down to the time when we do the assignments and stuff, we know what your wishes are.
We also have tried, I know last year, tried to email you all, we've assigned the chief rep to the promoter, so that you know that you have a chief rep for your event, and then you can start the dialogue with that. So if for some reason you don't receive an email and your event's coming soon, you haven't heard, reach out to us. We'll be happy to resend it or get in touch.
Great. Ideally, we want to get the assignment email out to you and the chief about a month in advance at the latest, so that you can start working together. Okay. When we do go to make the actual assignments, there's several factors that go into that. One of them is that we have guidelines for the number and types of officials that each event needs, whether it's road, depending on how many categories we have on at the same time, or it's a cross race, a crit, based on the NEBRA guidelines, which are posted on the NEBRA website. You can all look at those. There are some opportunities that you can take where you can actually reduce the number of officials. Okay. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're covered with the proper amount, but there's a couple of things that you can do. One of them is, let us know if you have a timing and scoring company working your event. Okay, that's one of the things that always comes up sort of way late in the process, and we have no visibility to that. So if you have a timing and scoring company working your event, please let us know. Particularly for cross, right? Especially some of the smaller cross races, a new cross race, something like that, where we don't have a sort of a tribal knowledge of your race because we're relatively new to the process. We haven't worked all of your races or been to them or anything like that. If you have a timing and scoring company that's going to take care of that stuff, there's the potential that we might need one less assistant judge at the finish line. Okay, isn't always the case. It all depends on how big the event is and things like that. But certainly, if there's an opportunity for that, we don't want to assign too many officials and then have you not be happy when you go, well, why do I need another official? I have a timing and scoring company. We didn't know that, so please let us know that. As part of the process. Okay. The other thing that you can do is, and Elisa will talk about this in a minute, is every USA Cycling club has the ability to get a free official's license for one of their club members who takes and passes the course. Right? It's still true? Stuart,
If it's not, I'll make sure.
Okay. So if your club has somebody that's interested in becoming an official, okay, have them come to, and she'll tell you about that in a second, or do the online course, and become a USAC official, and USA Cycling will, pay for the first year official's license. Okay, which is official's license. 70. Starts. Actually, class and first license. Yeah. So it starts at 35. Just depending on where you're at, class may cost, may come in, but 35 is your beginner license. And as you move up the ranks, you pay more for the second year. See official still 35 or second? No, it goes up to regular rate. Yeah. So anyway, there's that ability, and then we could then use that official in some of the assistant positions. They can't be a chief rep or a chief judge of your local race, but they can be an assistant. Okay. And it's your choice whether you pay your club member to work that or not. That's up to you. The whole point is they should be working. Yeah, it's the experience, right? But we would also we would encourage them to work with us at other events and things like that, where they actually could get paid, or they can apprentice to learn, and so that they will be an effective free official for you at your local club.
Speak.
Yeah, I want to get on the assignment system. Like, I went to USA second official license like 2 years ago, and nobody ever called me.
Really? And did you take it online or did you take it in person?
Online.
Okay, so there's a we'll call it a gap.
I officiated our club races because I was certified. I was doing it, but I never got on assignment.
Okay, so send us an email to assignments@nebra.us and we'll work with you on that.
One thing on that, just, and this is a bigger issue, not just bill officials, but were you opted out of your USA Cycling Communications?
No.
No, you take the course online, the local associations have no idea that anybody did that.
Right.
Well, but if you opt out, if you never need a list, I can get it.
Yeah.
When you opt out of the communications from USA Cycling, when you check box, that opts you out, so JD doesn't get this information.
Right, so I sometimes can't find your email addresses,
So when we want to expand the pool, we're only communicating to roughly maybe 40% of the members in the area, unless they opt in. So it's, just check that out. It's hard to find, so that will get better as we get off legacy. But if you do have an issue finding that, if you're getting emails from us, you're good.
And I will send out to everyone who's attended this, the invite lists for the promoters Google group as well as the officials Google groups that you can get into those groups and start getting into that communication platform.
The other thing that we want to make sure that you understand is we really do try to get you, A, the best officials crew that we can, B, the most cost-effective officials crew that we can for your race. Okay, but there are some factors in that sometimes we're just handicapped. The number of available officials for any one given race, weekend, whatever, we're completely at the mercy of people's availability. So sometimes there may be a local official that's 10 miles from your event. They're just not available that day. Okay, so we have to pull somebody in from 50 miles away or something, and you have to pay the travel for that. So we really do try our best to keep the cost down, but sometimes there's factors that we just can't control. Okay? So just wanted to point that out. Moto insurance. I know some of you have motor officials, pace motors and things like that work at your events. Okay, and in the past, we've sort of taken care of getting the insurance, but I'm not, getting the insurance information submitted to USA Cycling for you. But that hasn't sort of been really a formalized process necessarily, and not everybody knows that. So, sometimes we'll get an email saying, so-and-so is asking for my insurance information. Now, last year we did this, and for the last few years through the spreadsheet process that Stuart talked about, my point here was going to be, hey, I'm going to continue to do that this year, and I want you all to know that if you have motors and blah, 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 and then Stuart shows us that there's a new process for autos and motos, so we'll have to figure out that.
If the spreadsheet works, if it's not broke, let's don't fix it.
Okay.
So we can still work that. I think the bigger issue is, we have a lot of non-competitive events that have motor marshals and other things, and you wouldn't necessarily be handling that. So we got to come up with a better system to deal with that. But we can still process things through a spreadsheet if you want to organize that.
Okay, and so as part of that, the other thing that we do is we make sure that all of our officials have all of our appropriate licensing, our USAC license, our safe sport, our background check, and our MDR. Okay, we take on making sure that any motor official in New England that's working has that stuff before we assign them, so that we can send in that information ahead of time. So there's that.
Okay, also apprentices, we try to encourage new officials to work an event as an apprentice. So you might see, we have asked that the chief rep, if that is the case, that we have an apprentice on the crew to reach out to the promoters to let them know you might see an extra person walking around. not necessarily in USAC gear, but helping out and observing. Those are basically learning experiences, no cost to the promoter other than maybe lunch if you feel. We don't request that, but so it's another opportunity for officials to learn. Speaking of learning, another thing, Sean, myself, Tony Philpin, Jeff Poulin from New York, NEBRA. Last year, well, since 2015, we've been doing advanced officials training. We have a weekend in March that we do a new official clinic and then a motor clinic. But when the new officials are doing that, the existing officials are going through some training, some education to become better officials. And having better officials at your event means you hopefully have a better event and also builds camaraderie between all of us. So we have had the support of NEBRA, and USA Cycling. We've had Chuck Hodge and Randy Schaefer coming to past events, and Randy is coming out this year. So last year we had about 15 new officials take the class. We didn't do a motor clinic last year, we are this year. And we had 42 New England and New York officials attend the symposium. It's Northeast Officials Symposium, and it is March 14th and 15th. So those are just some of those things we do behind the scenes to make a better community for solid racing, for officiating.
Can promoters come to that without being officials?
Yeah, yeah. There's a bike reg link to register. Yeah, we're excited to do it again. It's a little more formalized last year. We do have one promoter from New York coming, so we'd love some more from New England.
So it's really a weekend. It's a similar format to this where you're in a conference room and it's really dedicated continuing education for our officials. And last year we held another one of these summits for our regional officials, and we're not going to do that this year. We're going to send everybody to the Danbury Symposium because it really was that good. So
we have done some education. When you go to a bigger events, caravans and all that, we decided to keep it grassroots and officiating at our local level. We are going to do some, what do we call it, speed officiating. We're going to have different scenarios in that and talk it out. We tend to learn a lot from each other by doing things like that after an event. Promoters might not see it, but a lot of us, did I make that call? Was that correct? How should I have done that? So expanding on that need for that, that's how we're, of course, getting this weekend's curriculum. Another thing that Tony Philpin has been working on is a chief rep class for those officials that are working on their upgrade. He has organized that, and we can speak to that. It's a pretty big deal to have it regionally, and a lot of work has gone into that.
Go ahead. 15, is it?
Yeah, USAC, when USAC changed the advancement program for C officials, they made the modules less onerous, but they added a workshop, a chief referee workshop. It's been given, I think, 2, maybe 3 times nationally in different parts of the country. I heard about it. I know that we had a need here, and I organized and got it brought up to New England. It's going to be held next month in Fishkill, New York. We're having 18 officials come to that from as far west as Pittsburgh and as far south as Baltimore. And it's about, improving the customer experience both for the rider and for the promoters. And, it's a more formalized program and how we should be working together before the race, during the race, and after the event. And so that's the latest. Just a couple things I want to say on behalf of Sean and Lisa. If the promoters are making a substantial change to one of your events, let Sean and Lisa know. They kind of go by what you needed or in the past. And sometimes promoters have changed, gone from ground officials to all moto officials and stuff. And it's kind of thrown a monkey word. So if you guys are making a big change, let them know so they can get you the right officials for the job. And both the NOS and this thing, it's a grassroots thing. We, developed, brought it in here so that we can be better officials, better serve the racing community, and better work with you guys as promoters. Randy came last year and talked about that we are part of the experience provider, that network that's going to give riders and you guys that good experience. So we're signed on, we're all with you, and we all want the same thing. We want better events and more participation.
So if you have anybody in your club or you yourselves want to become an official, that symposium is the great way to do that for a weekend in March if you can spare the time.
Yeah, one day to get your C license, $35, includes lunch, and there's no test. Everybody wins.
Well, there is a beginning class.
That beginner, C
Yeah.
class, right?
That's a set.
They prerequisite.
No.
For a seat, no.
No.
Nope, not at all. Nope, not at all. You can, you mean to become an official?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, you just go on the bike rec link for Northeast Official Symposium. We'll send that out as part of it.
The only requirements for officials other than the classes, you are required to take the safe sport training.
Right.
And you are required to go through a background check, which is good for 2 years. So every 2 years, it's like $20 for every 2 years.
Yep.
But
Pretty straightforward. Any other questions? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Officiate a race and race, do you have like half the?
Well, that, you want to handle this?
so the short answer is no. Generally, because you're, as a promoter, you're paying the travel costs for the official, you really don't want to pay travel for 2 people and only have them. And then
No, I mean, if I wanted to be an official, but I also wanted to race at a race.
The same day?
I'm not at my race.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, well, yeah, you're free to race. Yeah. Well, what you would say is.
Now when you've been assigned to.
Right.
Right, so, but if you wanted to go to a race and then apprentice or shadow, if you wanted to like hang out and like get an appreciation for what's going on, yeah, we would ask that you let us know you're gonna apprentice, so that we can then tell the promoter, because you want to be sensitive to
That way
promoters.
you learn.
Yeah, sometimes I just don't want to, to all of a sudden get inundated with like 50 people. And be like, why am I paying for this? Right. I will say one request NEBRA will have of you for your officials is please always make sure that there's lunch for them. Like it's really thanks. That's probably, I know it seems small, but this one the biggest thing you can do is.
We get angry.
Some water.
Angry is not a good way to be.
A big bag of them.
That works too, yeah, that's very handy.
You did have them at your race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These folks are traveling to the race, they're all there, they're putting in a ton of time, so, those little things like, at Northampton, I try and find them their own porta potty.
Heater.
Yeah, the heater helps sometimes if you have a spring race, just little things, they're people, treat them like people.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
There you go, thank you.
So that sort of wraps up the official stuff that we have for the 5th annual NEBRA Symposium. Really thank you everyone for taking time out of the day. No one wants you to come out here, hang out with us, talk about bike racing. We really appreciate everything you do for the sport, and hopefully we can help you put on the best possible events that you can. Our goal is to make this the best region in the country for bike riding and bike racing. So hopefully we can all do it as a community. If anyone needs my contact info, we got business cards back there. If I don't respond to your emails, just email me, throw stuff at me. It is something that I am working really hard to get done. The board is going to be holding my feet to the fire.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Any feedback on NEBRA stuff, organizational stuff, email me or JD or both of us. Yeah, I love it. I love my emails. It's the greatest. president@nebra.us or my personal email, which I'm guessing most people have, or Twitter. Any media that works for you works for me. Yeah, anyway, thanks for coming, see the races. Awesome. Thank
you. 381.
Hey, Adam, thanks for any questions.
What number?
Oh, wow. That's a nice check.
389. 389. Let's go, 389.
Probably Richard.
People listening?
I'll take it.
397.
Same.
Give it away. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Well, we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, like us. Like, if it's gonna just distance, original, like, who is it? Those two not saying. Well, except I want to bring rounds. And I guess. So like, right, in the middle of the sea on my car, they just like cross in the middle of like the fairground. Like, I have no idea. I'll tell you what, I thought grab a beer, somehow watch the whole damn thing because it was bringing kids like your kid. Oh, and that, it's like, yeah, there's always got to be. Oh, yeah, so much. Yeah, even when we do, or across the street, as we call it. Yeah. I got It's like the perfect, it's like the perfect vehicle for committing criminal activity. That was like, I remember like 2013, 11 months back, like, just, it's perfect. So the, every single that I do, I can go my basically top everybody can see the photos. They get excited. Yes. Coming out of it looks like you're exploding. Thank you. Yeah. The ultimate would be if there was a way to only some kind of like not even looking parts of this in Connecticut, the licensing laws are really tough. And all of these places, like you got craft breweries in Connecticut, they all do the biggest business. Yeah, it's like getting everything out, like
nobody has a scale.
There's one actually.
And again, thank you very much for thank you for doing that. Yeah, definitely. Random. Just like very brief feedback thoughts on that because
I think it's really good. I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge for where we're at right now because we have some promoters who are relatively
Right.
really challenging other degrees. The people that need to.
Right. So the only
also just the 40 plus for me, being able to bring up some information and then you were here to see that this is what we're sharing. That helps. Either funny because we're actually want so that's whether
let me ask you, I think you're saying you're mixing that. So is it 1, 2, 3 slash 40 plus? Or it's on a post here, once again,
I'm just.
yeah, no. They want a shot, right? He wants a shot at winning.
So just as a side note, one thing I was having this, I think, is
We started this.
Yes.
Yeah.
They all.
Exciting to talk to Stu about that. Everybody wants to do several things. They're like, I was asking them what stuff are you sending people to do session to, and they basically said, they could like, they could visual as much as possible over on their website.
Yeah, well, that's because that's a question I've been asking for years, like that, what was that Bellinger's guy when? He's not lying about that. I'm like dying to get out there and something like, something that really needs.
Well, we had we did, yeah.
Sort of, I don't know, actually, with the owners of videos, to do like things that like, columns with their reads, long posts, make the online the same words. Visual content, and they will push that forward.
Yeah, that is,
It's specifically emails.
that is easier for them now I know Danielle wanted to be here, but she was upstairs. It's actually good snow.
Yeah, she said that. It's rolling. Take it up, so.
So everybody had, there's not everybody else except. Well, I care what they tell too. They have their parents. Yes. I get, and it's also, I get way more. There's all other kids. I had all the books for small. Like, we have all, I can raise yeah, I wasn't there, but really, it's actually sitting around. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, right. That's like a big thing. Yeah, $25 great rates. You're What's the data? I think that's actually better.
Yes.
But yeah.
That's what I so long.
Yeah.
randomized results. It should be like other questions. Yes. Girls with practical. Yeah. Well, how do you know if you want to reward? Who's asking?